Grieving husband accused me of murder after his sister's accidental death, and now I must navigate legal and personal turmoil. My 30F husband, Luke, 33 male, had a sister, Laura, 29F. We were all close and saw each other 2 to 3 times a month, along with their parents. Almost 6 months ago, Laura fell down the stairs at their family home and died. It was a freak accident. There's a window on the half landing and she hit her head on the sill. I was the last person to see her. I was there for less than 10 minutes and she was in her pajamas making coffee. I didn't even stay for a drink, and I struggle with how such a brief and meaningless interaction could have been her last. She deserves so much more. My husband and I have only been married for a year, but we've been together for 4 and have known each other for 20 plus. When Laura's parents found her, they called my husband straight away and we rushed over. We faced the whole thing as a family. In the days after, Luke started quizzing me. Exactly what we talked about, what she was wearing, where we were standing, etc. It progressed to saying I was providing conflicting information. On tiny details he was deliberately misunderstanding, and accusing me of withholding information because I couldn't tell him things like what pajamas she was wearing. This escalated quickly but lasted for less than a week, as I lost my cool and made it clear that I was done answering questions. He didn't bring it up again and I wrote it off as a grief quirk. His behavior was generally that of a normal, grieving person. Last Friday, he outright accused me of murdering her, in front of his parents. Out of the blue. We were all stunned. There was an inquest which recently concluded, and there was never any doubt the verdict would be accidental death. He said it was completely obvious and he couldn't believe that no one else could see it. He claims I went through his phone and found his messages with Laura. I have absolutely no idea what messages he's talking about. I have never looked at his phone, and that I went over to confront her and things got out of hand and I pushed her downstairs. By the end he was shouting about going to the police and getting the inquest overturned, and how I wasn't going to get away with it. Let me be clear, Laura and I had a great relationship. We all did. I have no idea where this has come from, other than these messages I haven't seen, and even then, I don't think there's anything I could ever see on someone's phone that would drive me to murder. It's just ridiculous. He's been with his parents since this happened and will not talk to me at all. I've had some contact with his mom, but she's not being very communicative. The last I heard, she didn't know what messages he was referring to either. I am still completely stunned and I have no idea how to proceed. I made a commitment to be there for him always, and I understand that grief can manifest in strange ways, but part of me feels like my love for him died the second he called me a murderer, and I don't know how we could possibly work through this. I also really don't want to be thought of in this way, and I have no idea if he has said anything to people we know. I obviously haven't. A brain tumor or psychotic break has crossed my mind and I suggested it to his mother, and she just said she'll talk to him. Other than the questions before, he hasn't been acting odd. Obviously he's been grieving, but he seemed sane and sensible other than this. I feel like I'm going mad. Does anyone have any advice at all? TL, doctor, my husband's sister died in a horrible accident, and my husband, for absolutely no reason other than some mystery messages, thinks I murdered her. Edit, it has come to my attention that I accidentally used Laura's real name once in this post. Can I kindly ask that anyone who commented who is, real name? Delete their comment, as I really don't want this to bleed into my real life. For obvious reasons. Oop, I was interviewed by the coroner's office after her death, as I was the last person to see her. She died about 3 hours after I saw her, and I'd been to the supermarket and was home by that point. It's all verifiable and was a recorded interview. I haven't spoken to anyone but his mother, and that's only been over messages. She's never been a big texter, but she has seemed very cagey over the past few days. I don't know if this means she's seen the messages. I've asked and been ignored. Oop, I'm feeling so freaked out at the idea that he came up with this almost immediately after her death, and has either been sitting on it or planning his confrontation, that I'm basically trying to dissect the past 6 months. Maybe it's time I start writing things down. Right until it happened, things felt very normal. Obviously her death has been felt deeply by all of us and things aren't anything like they were, but there have been no signs of anything like this, even on the day. I'm in a bizarre and complex situation with my husband. I have broken the law, and I feel I have no choice but to do so again for my safety. I don't know what type of solicitor I need or what the next steps should look like. We're in England, and I'll try not to editorialize too much. My husband's sister died suddenly at the start of the year. Her death was an accident and there was no suggestion to the contrary. The inquest was recently concluded and a verdict of accidental death returned. I was the last person to see her, but her time of death, which was almost immediate due to her injury, was confirmed to be hours after I had left the house. All of this was verified at the time. In the immediate aftermath, my husband behaved strangely and kept trying to trip up my story of the last time we saw each other, which was a brief interaction. Last week, months after this was first and last mentioned, he outright accused me of murder, in front of his parents. He says I saw his messages with his sister, and confronted her, and that he's going to have the coroner decision overturned and have the police investigate. I haven't seen or heard from him since. Today is day 9. I posted for advice on Reddit. I'm pretty desperate at this point, and it has spooked me, quite reasonably I think, but also led to me committing a crime and planning another. My husband's iCloud credentials were saved on an old iPad in his office, and I downloaded his backup last night. I have read all of his messages with his sister, and there is absolutely nothing like he describes. I understand this is illegal and I'm concerned about the possible ramifications. I am also waiting for a callback from a locksmith to change the locks on the home we own together, which I believe is also against the law. So this leads to my actual questions. I feel justified in what I've done for my safety, but is there a degree of pragmatism under the law for these issues because of the situation, or am I shooting myself in the foot? I am resigned to the fact my relationship is over, but his parents don't seem to be taking this seriously and they're icing me out. I believe this is a serious mental health issue which may put people, namely me, at risk. Can I do anything about this when all I have is the fact I'm being accused of murder? I feel he needs to be detained and this should be investigated as a full-blown psychotic break. Sorry, this is all a bit mental. In addition, what type of solicitor do I need? My understanding is that a coroner decision can't be appealed, is that correct? Are his accusations going to go anywhere? Can I protect myself from this or stop him escalating to telling others? We live in our hometown and everyone knows everyone. This could follow me forever and it's either a lie or a delusion. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Oop, what else can I do? He has blocked me everywhere, and we went from a normal couple dealing with a new normal 6 months after the death of his sister, to M.E. being accused of murder over a family dinner because of messages which clearly don't exist, and it's been 9 days and I've heard nothing since. Can I remind you that the inquest was held and concluded? I dropped off some Tupperware, grabbed an umbrella I'd left behind the previous week, went to a big Tesco, then went home and called my mum. I was already home by the time she died, and my whereabouts were extremely easy to verify because my husband was home all day. It's obvious that he's going through some serious issues coping with the death of his sister. That is the exact point of all of this. I don't think that's a fair assessment. Being accused of arguably the most serious crime to exist has most definitely occurred. My understanding of the law is that something is illegal whether you are reported to the police or not. Those messages are evidence as far as I'm concerned, that his accusations are false. They were apparently the trigger to me literally murdering someone I was extremely close to. I have illegally accessed them, and I don't think it's unreasonable to inquire as to the potential impact of that. I am fully aware that I need a solicitor, but as you're probably aware, today is Sunday. I don't know if I need to seek someone out based on a divorce, which honestly, if this is a mental health issue, is not going to be something I go for, or a criminal solicitor, or someone who deals with the Mental Health Act, as my absolute priority preference is getting him assessed. Update 1. I wasn't expecting much from Reddit, but I got valuable practical advice before my post was locked, and I appreciate it. There were no crazy, or even suspicious messages. I've searched for over 100 terms and scrolled back over years. I saw a side of them both I wasn't expecting, but nothing that explains the claim I murdered Laura over their chats. Nothing to suggest he was cheating. Absolutely nothing to suggest incest. I repeat, no incest. No weird gaps where deleted conversations or a switch to another app would fit. Just siblings making plans, sending memes, and gossiping. They said unexpectedly horrible stuff about a few people, but not me. It was a sort of relief, but it raised more questions than it answered. I sought legal advice, also from Reddit, after posting here. Turns out my options are divorce him or sit down. I contacted my community mental health team, who said they'd reach out, but made it clear it wasn't urgent. I then called his mom and said that if I didn't hear from him by this weekend, I would get a solicitor and ask for a mental health assessment as part of the divorce. In response, he made a ridiculous post to Facebook, which neither of us have used in years, and everything blew up. I'm going to try to keep this succinct. On Friday night, he made a long accusation on Facebook, with new information. He said he'd been planning to leave me for months with his sister's support, and I found the messages, and murdered her. The coroner has reopened the case and the police are preparing to arrest me, and he needs to make sure people know before the trial stops him talking about it. It was well written and seemed vaguely plausible. He messaged people links so it got some attention. We live in our hometown, and have a large circle of friends because we've been here all our lives. People I haven't spoken to since school were reaching out to me asking WTF was going on. It was madness. In response, I posted the export of his entire conversation history with Laura, also to Facebook, when I finally got back in. I linked to the chat along with a post explaining my side, and noting that I had changed my ex's iCloud and Apple passwords, and that if he wanted them back, he should comment on my post and update his own, admitting that he was lying. He eventually did. When I started getting messages about his post, I panicked, and changing his password seemed important to preserve everything because he'd know I had access. When I spoke to him the next morning, it's clear he's not having a mental episode at all, but is claiming one because he's been caught in a big lie. As soon as he was outed, he called me, clearly drunk, begging and promising to explain everything if I deleted my post. I hung up and told him to call back the next day. He did, after many missed calls and texts, and he tried to bargain and guilt-trip me with his mental health until it was clear the wrong people had seen his conversation. It's hard to describe, but it seemed fake. It was too well rehearsed, and then this morning, when it was clear he was getting nowhere, he blocked me. Begging for mercy and reciting facts about mental disorders doesn't align with someone in crisis with a sincere belief that someone murdered their sibling. The question of why he did all this remains unanswered, and he will not be getting his passwords until it is. The legal advice subreddit said this stuff is technically illegal, but it's beneath a court to take action, so I'm going to count on that because I felt like I had no other choice at the time, and now I don't see any other way to get answers from him. I am desperate and it's all I've got. So there we are. The relationship I have believed was my destiny since I was a teenager has boiled down to petty, convoluted and vindictive bullshit, played out on social media, for reasons still unknown. My hope for a brain tumor is fading, and clearly tomorrow morning is going to be when I lawyer up and stop posting about this. I am mortified. I have no idea whether some people might believe him, and I still don't know why this all happened in the first place. Sorry I don't have a happier update, and thanks once again to everyone who offered advice. Oop, he didn't react at all. He'd called me tens of times at that point and we did 5 conversations on the phone about it. He was laser focused on me deleting the chat log from the get-go, but when I made it clear that posting that comment and editing his original Facebook post was the only way to progress the conversation at all, he finally did it. Then he went silent publicly as far as I can see, but continued begging me behind the scenes. Oop, I think it was the fact that it proved his story false, alongside the way they spoke about some people. It was really damaging stuff and I can see why he panicked. I hated to do it to him, but I really couldn't think of anything else because so many people had questions. Now on to second story. Laughed when my aunt suggested therapy was a better option than stealing a husband, and now my father's enraged. My first language is Spanish. Long story short, 2 years ago my father left my mother to go with his mistress, whom I will call Anna. My mother never had any idea about the infidelity, and I knew that my father was married. She even went to the house with him to take his things. One day he simply told my mother that he is no longer in love with her and wants to be happy with Anna. I was there when everything happened. Anna was depressed. She has many scars on her legs and arms. I don't go to my father's house. It makes me uncomfortable to be around them for obvious reasons. Anna is overly nice and it's really uncomfortable. A few days ago it was my grandfather's birthday and the whole family was together, including Anna. I have an aunt who suffers from depression and other more heavy things like schizophrenia. She has tried to hurt herself many times. At one point in the night there were only my father, my aunt, Anna, another aunt and I in the living room. For some reason my aunt and Anna were talking about some serious things, and at one point Anna began to say that depression made her do many things trying to feel fulfilled, that she could only overcome depression when she met my father and he saved her, that meeting him was the key to overcome her depression, and now she's finally happy thanks to him. I know about that because Anna often tried to bond with me by telling me how much she suffered in her life and how my father saved her. She has always justified herself that she was depressed and was in a hard place in her life before my father saved her. It always makes me feel uncomfortable and I don't feel empathy for her no matter how sweet she is. Talking about how many times you try to kill yourself in front of my 8-year-old sister, it's not something normal. Anna has always tried to paint her relationship with my father as a fairy tale that began in a different way, but that she doesn't regret anything because her world is perfect now. At that moment my aunt said something like, I tried to save myself by going to a psychologist, not by jumping on the dick of a married man, and then she began to say that depression made her want to jump off a bridge but not ruin a family. I just laughed. It was funny. My aunt may have her mind elsewhere all day, but it was crazy to see her make such a sly comment. But when my father was taking me home Anna was crying and he scolded me for laughing at what my aunt said, saying that no one knows everything that Anna suffered. I know. She always talks about that. I didn't apologize, but now I think, was I really wrong to laugh? From my point of view, my aunt was right. Update 1. Hello, some things happened over the weekend. My aunt came home, I live with my mother, and told my mom what happened. My sister is an 8-year-old girl and she really hates Anna. Anna wants to try to get along with my sister and told her about the time she wanted to commit suicide and how my dad saved her. After that my sister came home asking my mother if she had ever thought about committing suicide. That's not a question an 8-year-old girl should ask, and my sister even asked me questions about suicide after that. I don't really know what else exactly Anna said to her, but it definitely affected her as a little girl. It's not even something you should talk about with a girl of that age. My mother was furious, and since that day she forbids my father to have my younger sister near Anna as she considers her a dangerous and unstable person around children. Since that day things have been really tense between my father and my mother. My little sister doesn't want to visit our father, so she is fine with this. My aunt told my mother that Anna talked about it again, but this time in front of me. Apparently my father and Anna were totally forbidden to talk about these things in front of me too. I'm not a little kid, but apparently that was the arrangement my mother made with my father when she set boundaries for them. My aunt told her what happened that day, and I confessed to my mother that Anna and my father talk a lot about those suicide attempts in front of me, which is something I should have talked about before, but at that moment I didn't want problems and decided to just ignore them. I told my mom that for that reason I am not going to my father's house anymore, and my mother got very upset with him. The next day she went to talk to my father. I don't know what they talked about. She just came back saying that Anna can't get close to us anymore. She told me that she can't forbid me from being near my father, and that's my decision, but Anna is extremely forbidden to set foot in the same place where I and my sister are. My paternal grandparents agreed, and my aunts too. They knew about the situation with my younger sister. I haven't spoken to my father, but my cousin told me that my father argued with my grandfather. He often says that Anna is a good person and we don't understand the pain she suffered, so I guess he's upset with all of us now for our great lack of empathy, as he always says. I don't know, at least now I won't see them for a while. It was a boring update, but that's what happened. Haha info. My father is only 3 years older than Anna. She is not much younger than him or anything like that. From what Anna told me, she always tell LS it, they met at work, she called my father every time she tried to commit suicide and so he began to help her. Anna used to go to the psychologist but said that she decided to leave it because that did not help her, then she met my father and well, according to her he saved her. It is disturbing to hear her talk about how she always sent messages to my father since he was her only support, her words, and he ran and left everything at home to go with her every time she was feeling bad. A sociopath in my books. A good person doesn't talk about suicide with an 8-year-old, whose brain hasn't developed fully to understand its implications. Or a good person doesn't have sex with a man who is in a committed relationship. Oop, my cousin doesn't like her neither. My father is the one who says those things. Update 2. I have stopped going to see my father and my father's parents stopped allowing him to go with Anna to their house since I am there a lot and my mother does not allow her to come near me or my sister. Anna began to have the strange behavior of starting to send me texts. First she apologized to me but insisted that my father misses me and my sister. I replied to her that my mother does not allow us to talk to her and she said that she is my father's partner so we have to get used to her being around. She started to talk badly about my mother, skeptical, saying that I'm too young to realize it but my mother is manipulating us and that's wrong because she's not allowing us to be a family. I'm young but I'm not dumb. I didn't answer her again and showed the messages to my mother who spoke to my father again. My father knew nothing about this and apparently had an argument with Anna about this since now my mother is planning to take away his last name from our name to end with this shit show and protect us. I don't understand too much about this, but in my country you can go to court and take out your father's surname making him have no right over you anymore. I honestly believe that neither my sister nor I would have any problem with this but I think my mother just said that to scare him. This is something I heard from my aunt and I don't know how much of this is real but my father has been staying at my grandparents' house. One of those nights Anna went to knock on the door looking for him just to argue. She and my father began to argue. Anna yelled at my dad that he couldn't leave her like that but nothing else happened because my grandfather kicked her out. My aunt also told me that my father told her that Anna sends him messages like if you leave me I will kill myself, you can't leave me, so my father is afraid of leaving her and afraid of her. Less than 2 days ago I found out that my father had to leave work quickly because she sent him goodbye messages. Nothing happened to her, she just cut her arms as always. My aunt said that this is something that Anna has always done. Even when the affair started she sent him messages saying that she was about to commit suicide so that my father would go to her. This is something that Anna also told me but in a more romantic way. It always scared me. I have no contact with my father and I avoid him when he's on grandpa's house but as far as my aunt has told me, he doesn't know what to do since he misses us but is afraid to leave her and that she will kill herself. I feel bad for thinking this but I'm really relieved to be hearing all this from afar. I'm so thankful that my mom forbade us to see her before all this happens and honestly this is his karma so I'm not going to get into this. Anna took her own life when my father went to get some of his things with grandpa and was scared that she could hit or do something to him. That's all I know, but she killed herself while they were loading some of my father's stuff into the car. I'm very shocked. I wanted to think what everyone told me that she wasn't going to do it. I don't want to talk to my father at all. Is this wrong? Want my mother to take us away from him? I do not know. I go to the psychologist and my sister too, but neither of us want to talk to my dad even now. I don't want that drama in my life. My psychologist says it's normal and I shouldn't talk with him if I don't want to. My sister hates him. I don't feel bad for Anna either and that makes me feel worse. The last thing I heard about her before this was that the police didn't do anything because they never do anything and she refused to continue her psychological treatment because according to my aunt, they would tell her that she should be hospitalized and that happened to my aunt in the past too. I didn't know that. I remember my father telling her about her appointments with the psychologist and even the psychiatrist sometimes because of the medications and the start of that relationship but she would refuse and say she was fine. She wasn't young or naive, she was 34. Almost my parents' age. I even think she had more control in the relationship than my father. She was a grown woman and I can admit that this last days I was nervous about her BC of all the things she was doing. I don't feel bad about her death. I even feel very relieved that she is dead and it is something that my aunts have also told me. Everyone feels like that about her. They and my psychologist say that it is normal to feel that way but anyway I prefer to think that I am a better person than her and my father so I'm not going to be happy for it but respectful. It's sad to think that we're all relieved when someone died. She wasn't a good person at all. My father is not a good person either and I know it. He is not an innocent. He did many bad things to my mother during the whole divorce process. He left us until it occurred to him to want to play family with that woman and even so my mother had always encouraged us to talk to him. They both did a lot of things to my mother during the divorce process, but now I just want my mother to continue to forbid my faith are from seeing us until we want to see him. Anna scared me. I also feel guilty thinking that she may have seen one of my posts even though I don't know if she knows English or the existence of this app. I think I'm rambling a lot and this post doesn't make sense.